Welcome, guys. We'll get started here in just a second. If you're here for the Norada Capital webinar, you're in the right place. If you're looking for something else, probably want to click out of the webinar here. And I'm assuming I've invited a couple people here. If you've talked to me already, I always like to see your names in the chat. So I'm Nate, one of the investment counselors here. So feel free to throw your name in the Q&A box. Yeah, I mean we're 3 minutes in. Let's kick it off here, Marco.
Okay.
Well, welcome aboard, guys. This is for Norada Capital Management, and we're going to be talking about how the fund works today. We're going to be talking about promissory notes. This is what we call an Ask Marco Anything or a general FAQ. So this is not as topic specific like tying in real estate or talking specifically about one business sector that we invest in. We're going to be talking it's just from a general overview about Norada Capital. So think about this like an introduction. And some of you might be brand new to notes. Some of you might be considering investing with us if you've already talked with one of us here at Norada. So again, my name is Nate Hall. Probably talked to some of you on this webinar already. I've been in the investment real estate world for over a decade. I've been in the private money lending world. I've borrowed money, excuse me. I've borrowed money, I've lent money, and kind of a world that we live in, right? It's a world that we live in. Sorry, Mark, I think I just choked on something.
You don't have to apologize. You're good.
Let me take a sip of water here.
Yeah.
So this is an area of focus that I've lived in and been around for a decade. So working with Marco and being a part of the Norada Capital team for the last 4 years has been really fun to see. I mean, I've seen him grow the real estate sector. I've seen him grow the businesses that he owns and operates, which back Norada Capital. So we'll get into all that today. Marco, if you want to take maybe 30 seconds and give yourself an intro there, that'd be great.
Yeah, thanks, Nate. Good opening. I'm Marco Santarelli. Many of you probably know me or are aware of who I am. I'm the CEO and founder of a number of companies. Norada Real Estate Investments is one of them. I started that 20 years ago. It's the premier leading provider of turnkey rental property in the U.S., potentially one of the largest, if not the largest. And Norada Capital Management is a private equity firm that I started about 4 years ago. From the investor looking from the outside in, it's essentially an investment fund. We issue promissory notes, and we use that capital to grow and scale existing business ventures that we have built and or co-founded or are equity investors in, meaning that we're part owners. And so that is, a lot of what we're talking about today is what we're doing with Norada Capital, the businesses that we're growing and scaling, and the investment opportunity that we're offering through the promissory notes. But long story short, I've been a serial entrepreneur my entire life. I started when I was a teenager. Actually, at the age of 13 is when I first ventured out into entrepreneurship. And then I bought my first rental property after I became an adult at the age of 18. So that's a little bit of my background. I'll keep it short because I could talk about all those things at length, but
Sure.
It's all good. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, appreciate that, Marco. And what we'll do, guys, is a couple ground rules as we go through the webinar today. There's a Q&A box you can click on. Okay, so you'll see in the bar across the bottom of your screen, you can click on the Q&A box. As you guys have questions as we go through this webinar today, feel free to put your questions in there and we'll work to answer those. Most of the time we do a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. If it kind of pertains to what we're talking about in the moment and we happen to see it pop up, we might answer it then. But normally towards the end of the webinar, we'll get to all those. I will also be utilizing the chat box where I can send everyone messages, and I can put in there links to investor profiles, the investor slide deck, some of our different companies, things like that. And I noticed, Marco, in my settings here in the webinar chat, normally I have the opportunity to click everyone and actually, chat, message everyone. Unfortunately, I don't see that setting today.
Oh, really? Interesting. I do.
Yeah.
Yeah, the blue drop down gives me
Exactly. Yeah. Normally it says I have the option to click everyone, but it's only
okay.
you, and the hosts, and the panelists, which is interesting. So,
Okay.
oh, good. I can put that in the Q&A section as well if I need to.
Yeah,
And
I can also put links.
Yeah.
I'll put links as well.
Okay. And we might be doing some screen shares as well, guys, to go through this process. So let's start out. we always like to go through the basics of a note and the basics of the fund, right? What backs the fund. We talk about the different companies within the fund that back your investment, back your note. And we like to go over some general FAQ as well. We get typically the same questions every week. Um, so let's start there, Marco. Unless there's a couple ground rules I might have missed. I'm not sure if I missed anything that popped up for you, but
No, just the two main things is just put your question in the Q&A box at any time. We will see it and we will get to it in a second. This is being recorded, so if you are late
right.
or you have to leave early, we record every week, and so we'll make that available to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, that's it.
All right. So starting off here then, why don't we kick it off? I like to start with the actual foundation of a promissory note. We know it's a basic loan agreement, but there might be some people on here that don't know what that is. So we'll continue to do that to educate our investors. So Marco, you do a great job at explaining the note structure, what it is, the basics of it. So can we start there?
Yeah. So it's almost like the exact same thing every week that I say
Yeah.
what a promissory note. A promissory note sounds like a fancy term for what is essentially just a loan agreement. It's just a simple legal document, a loan agreement between two parties, a borrower and a lender. The lender is you, anybody looking to invest in that promissory note. The borrower can be any person or any company or any institution, but it's just a loan agreement between two parties, and that document lays out the terms, the start date, the end date, the interest rate being paid, when that gets paid. Is it monthly, quarterly, annually? At the very end, as a balloon payment. So there's just different variations of it. Even a mortgage loan is essentially a promissory note. It's just a more extensive document. And that's all it is. So, and there's two basic flavors: secured, unsecured. A secured note is attached to a collateral, a specific asset, could be a house, a car, boat, whatever. Unsecured notes are very common. They're not secured, meaning attached to a piece of collateral, but there's usually reasons for that. And that's pretty typical with corporate notes. In other words, a company raising capital, debt capital, through the use of a promissory note, typically don't attach it to anything in most cases, because it's actually a loan to the company. They're borrowing the funds for operations, for inventory, for marketing, for business growth and expansion, whatever it may be. And that's very, very common. It's done every single day of the year throughout the country, or any first world country for that matter. And that's the case with us. Norada Capital Management is a company raising capital to arbitrage that capital to grow, build, scale its business ventures. And so because of that, we don't attach that note to any one of our business ventures or business assets, because you're growing and you're benefiting from the growth of all those business ventures. So think of our portfolio, our assets under management, all the companies that we're invested or vested in, as the foundation under your note.
Right.
So in that sense, a lot of investors have referred to it as a form of diversification. You're benefiting from everything that we're doing, not just one business venture. So that's essentially what a promissory note is and how it works. And if you've ever signed a car loan, boat loan, a boat loan, a signature loan, a student loan, or anything like that, you've signed a promissory note. So it's not like it's an unfamiliar concept to you or most people.
Right. Well said. And the basics, guys, there's a lender and a borrower. You're becoming the bank, right? You're
Yeah.
becoming the bank to Norada Capital Management, and we work with, private accredited investors. That's how we've grown the fund. That's how we've grown the businesses. So, as we get into the call here, you'll see we've been raising capital for quite a while. We're on in the fourth quarter of the raise, I would say, like in a 4-quarter game. We're not going to be raising capital indefinitely for the next 10 years at 12 to 15%. There's a certain specific time period that Marco and his partners have set out to raise capital and meet benchmarks. And you're not going to be indefinitely raising capital at 12 to 15% forever. So there's still an opportunity, but it doesn't mean that we're always going to be on the table, right? There's offerings like this aren't, it's accredited offerings like this typically aren't indefinite. So
Right.
With that said, like a great explanation, Marco, there's a lender, there's a borrower. Our investors are the lenders, right? This is essentially a private money loan to Norada Capital, and we pay you an interest rate to borrow that capital. It's a 12 to 15% fixed, not variable. It's a fixed interest rate we pay you to borrow that money. Okay. And the minimum investment is $50,000. The minimum term is 3 years. So there's three basic requirements: the 50K minimum, 3-year term, and having a third party letter of accreditation, right? So we need to have either from your CPA, your lawyer, or a website like verifyinvestor.com. We have to have a third party letter. Our SEC attorneys and the SEC require that, right? It's not our rule. So if you meet that criteria on this call and it's something you're considering, those are the three basic things, right? Having the capital, having the letter, and the minimum 3-year term. So with that said, do you want to go into the terms real quick on the note, and then we can talk about the companies that back the note? Okay. So grab a pen, guys. If you're on this webinar, grab a pen, grab a notepad. If you have a computer in front of you, do that. So there's two main tiers and kind of a third bonus tier for receiving your distributions, right? So 50K minimum is the investment. Anything 50 to 100K, call it, is 12% annually, paid monthly distributions. Anything over 100K is 15% paid monthly distributions. And then 200K benchmark and over, we have some higher net worth investors that do 200K and more. Anything over 200K plus is still 15%, but you get a 5% back end pad or a bonus pad on the maturity date of that note. So let's say, easy math, let's say you have a $200,000 note for 3 years. You make 15% for 3 years on that 200K note. At the end of the 3 years, we return your principal to you plus a 5% bonus on that 200K investment. So it's $10,000. So that's kind of that third tier to incentivize a little bit more investment. But average investor, usually puts somewhere between 120 to 150 to start in the fund. So those are the three basic tiers and breakdowns. Marco, if you could drop in, again, I can't chat everyone, but if you can drop in the investor slide deck that covers those terms in the note in that chat that you sent me, that'd be great.
The entire deck?
Yeah, I usually put the entire deck in there because it covers the businesses plus the offering.
Okay.
I have the link here, and I'll send it to you, and maybe you just copy and paste it into the.
Yeah, I'm doing it right now.
Into everyone. So
that's the drive, the G drive.
exactly. So guys, we'll send you a Google Drive link right now
Yeah, I'm
that
doing it.
you can review after the call, during the call, whatever you want. If you want to follow along with the different companies that we're going to cover here in a second, you can. So that's going to be dropped in the chat by Marco. But as far as the actual returns go, it's basically a hard money rate return, right? If you're in the real estate world and you're used to hard money or private money, you can make double-digit returns in the private money, hard money lending world. It's no different here, right? We don't offer a collateralized, or it's not a syndication where we offer equity position. So Marco made it attractive to people who want a strong cash on cash return to compete with things like that, right? And a syndication, you're going to make 8-9% a lot of the times with a back end multiplier, and your IRR is going to be 13, 14, 15%. And the choice here was just to pay out a strong cash on cash return on the front end, because with the high yield companies that are owned, that can happen. So, all right, Marco, I see you drop that in there.
Yep.
So that's going to have what I just recovered, guys. It's going to have the actual breakdown of the returns, the minimum investment, et cetera. So let's go into, holdings. We talk about, this Norada Capital Management as a holding company, and we're investing in Norada Capital. Let's say me as a investor, I want to say, hey, I want to invest $100,000 into Norada. What's backing my investment? Like, what am I investing in? And you already covered one of these things. Like, you don't tie the note directly to one business, which actually it decreases your risk position, in my opinion. But if I were to say to you, if I'm an investor, Mark, and I say to you, what is my note investing in? How would you respond to that?
So Norada Capital is a private equity firm, essentially focuses on three main categories of assets or businesses. And when I say assets, a business is an asset. The first, and where we got started essentially, is in the e-commerce space. So what we did, and this is, a 1-hour call in and of itself, but the short version of the story is that about 4 years ago, my business partners at the time went after name brand business assets. So there was a company, as you probably all recall, called Dress Barn. Dress Barn was a nationwide retailer of women's apparel. They had other, other goods and services, but mostly it was apparel. They filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy, as many retailers did, going far back to J.C. Penney and Sears. But there's a long, long list of these retailers. And so one of my partners got the idea of thinking, hey, we're experts in online business building, online marketing. Why don't we see if we can make them an offer and purchase the intellectual property, because they're going to be essentially liquidated and closed or shut down through a Chapter 7 federal bankruptcy. So we made an offer to Dress Barn, and I believe it was $5 million, and we offered them $5 million to purchase their intellectual property, which is their brand name, their trademarks, their website, their domain names or URLs, and importantly is their customer database. The names, email addresses, phone numbers of all the people that either subscribe to their newsletter or have been customers in the past. And once it went through the federal bankruptcy proceeding, we won, and we walked away with basically what we felt was everything of value. So we took over the operations, the online operations, and continued running that business online while the stores were shut down, inventory was liquidated, and staff was laid off, and the debt was forgiven. So we put all those assets, the intellectual property, into a new company, a new holding company, and started running that as a new business venture. That model worked so well that we tried it again with Pier 1, and we ended up ultimately, we almost lost it, but we ended up winning against a competitor with Pier 1. So we own Pier 1 Imports. And so that means that, again, we have the customer database, which is millions of people, the website, and just everything that goes along with that, hundreds of trademarks that they owned. They were the third largest retailer of scented candles in the country, which is interesting. They had their own candle department and a chemist, one or two chemists, which we did hire for a short period of time, but there was no need to keep them. So Pier 1 Imports is another brand business. Yeah. And then we kind of continue that on a little further. We went and acquired Steinmart, Model Sporting Goods, Linens and Things, Ralph and Russo, Roland Moray. These are boutique women's apparel retailers. And then another one that falls in that e-commerce space, which is bodybuilding.com, which is an international brand that has a lot of traffic, and there's a lot of opportunity to monetize that. That's the e-commerce space. So that's pillar one, if you will, or category one. That's where we started, and we still have a big footprint there. Although we're not necessarily out acquiring any more of those brand assets at this point in time. The second category is one that really excites me. It's something that we're spending a lot of time and energy on, and that's what I refer to as educational masterminds. I might need to come up with a slightly different name, not necessarily a better name, but we have these two businesses called Money Is and Level Up. These are two major masterminds where people come in as members for a year at a time to learn and grow, consume a lot of content, get education, be exposed to investment opportunities, and build a community, just bonding and working with other like-minded people. And we're talking like thousands of people, not just dozens of people. And so this is something that a couple of business partners and I have started a few years ago, and it's created a huge movement. It's got a lot of momentum right now. And we drive people into these two masterminds through a third business called Aspire. And every month we have a major event in a major city around the country called the Aspire Tour. And if you guys are in any major market, you've probably seen ads on social media, because we rerun like tens of thousands of ads all the time. And I'll put that link in the chat here in a moment. But the website is aspiretour.com, and Aspire with an A. So Aspire will have 2,000, 3,000, 4,000 plus people attend that event. From that event, they buy into a 3-day masterclass, and from the masterclass, those who want to continue on and in our ecosystem, in our world, continue education, networking, community, investment opportunities, will go on to the mastermind. That's a very lucrative business model. And so that's what we're focused on and building. And those are essentially 9-figure businesses. That's what we're building. It'll ultimately be bigger, but right now it does have a 9-figure valuation, those two collective. And then the third category, I know Nate likes this category because it's close
I
to his
do. Yeah.
heart, are theatrical productions. So we've been making investments in Broadway, well, theatrical productions, mostly on Broadway. They're not all on Broadway, but most of them are Broadway productions. And some of them were running, some of them are running, some of them will be running. It just depends on which production we're talking about. But there's about 11
Okay.
or 12 of them. And just in the last month or two, we opened up 3. The Notebook, very similar to the movie and the book. So The Notebook is running on Broadway right now. It's incredible. Go see it if you get the opportunity. Tommy, The Who, the band, The Who's Tommy is running, doing very, very well. And as of last week, we opened up Cabaret. It's a revival of the original Cabaret, and it's doing extremely well. So those are just 3 examples of productions that we're involved in. Now, the theatrical productions, I will say, make up a very, very small percentage of our fund, our portfolio. The biggest piece right now is really the educational masterminds.
Yeah.
So that's what we refer to as our portfolio. It's our businesses or assets under management. And those are what we're focused on to grow and scale and continue to make Norada Capital more valuable, worth more. And then, there are going to be some pretty exciting events in the years to come through mergers and acquisitions, partnerships, whatever it may be, because of what we've been focused on building. So Nate, that's kind of a 5-minute overview.
Yeah. I love it. I think that, at the end of the day, um, what I like about the diversification play is that there's enough businesses and enough companies that we're talking about here that help protect and reduce risk on your note, right? So a lot of people like to ask, risk positions and things like that. I love that we don't attach your note to Pier 1 or to Money Is or to one of your musicals, right? You can raise capital like that, but in this case, all those companies and all those positions that Marco just talked about are underneath Norada Capital, and your notes tied directly to Norada Capital. So, it's I think a very powerful thing, right? So, um, with that said, I don't think much was mixed. I was curious. I know I'm always curious. There's quite a few questions coming in as well. As an investor, people like to see the vision of where things are going, right? So the vision of e-commerce, the vision of the Aspire tour, the education piece. Do you see any of the education or mastermind, companies or positions going international, Canada, Australia? Is there any big visions for like where those are going to be headed?
Yeah, that's actually a 2-part question that you're asking. So, when you talk about vision, for example, with Money Is or Level Up Real Estate, yeah, we could definitely expand internationally, but I think it's important not to lose sight of the number of people, like the hundreds or
Yeah.
thousands or tens of thousands of people that we are impacting, that we are touching
Hmm.
to help them gain that financial education or improve their financial situation, because now they're investing in real estate, or they know how to invest in real estate, or they're moving their money and putting it into investment opportunities that is growing their money. So it's really the reach and the impact that we have through these business ventures like Money Is, Aspire, and a Level Up Real Estate. Even you could argue, even with the theatrical productions, I mean, it's a positive impact on society and the community to have the arts, to have the preserving the performing arts and making people happy, through the enjoyment they get through, theater and music and whatnot. So again, there's an element of impact there. Um, with you know, if you kind of step back and look at a slightly bigger picture, my partner Eddie Wilson, has an organization that we helped him start called Impact Others. The website is impactothers.com, and it's a nonprofit organization where we are changing communities all around the world, from India to Pakistan to, Bangladesh, wherever it may be. And we are helping to build sustainable communities, provide clean, drinkable water, food on a daily basis, educate people on entrepreneurship so they can be solopreneurs. And those people are now self-sustaining. They can help the community generate an income, be able to afford food, housing, et cetera, and be able to provide back to the community. So there's really 5 pillars inside Impact Others that you can see on the website if you go to impactothers.com. So many of these businesses, including Norada Capital, make contributions to Impact Others to continue to help grow the monies raised within Impact Others to go to these projects. And we put those projects up on the website where you can see what the project is, what the cost of that project is, and where it's located, and what, how many people it might be affecting.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of a bigger picture, way to describe vision, as you brought it up, Nate.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot going on. It's really just being able to help other people, in a win-win or win-win-win scenario, and that's kind of the bigger picture. Call it a vision or not, that's ultimately what is happening. It's the impact that we're providing.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Well, I think, as people grow and they start learning more about, what we do and the different companies, they'll see that for sure. And feel free, of course, Marco, to throw Impact Others into the chat as well.
Oh
Aspire
yeah.
to Impact Others.
Okay.
So I would if I had access to that chat piece. So
I'm doing it right now.
perfect. And I encourage you as well. I'm going to add this as well. So guys, go check out as well. If you're looking at the businesses, check out one of our websites. I just sent you a link to that, Marco. You can check
Okay.
out, I encourage you to go check out like A Beautiful Noise. It's doing extremely well on Broadway. You can see these are real companies, real musicals. These are all things I typically share on my end, Marco, but I
Yeah.
just don't have access to it. So, um,
Yeah, I'm doing it now,
perfect.
so everybody can. Don't want to inundate everybody with too many websites, but yes.
Yeah,
Okay. All right, I'm doing that.
perfect.
So where are we going from here?
So we've got some good questions, right? Some good people asking some questions here. So let's go into some questions here and kind of go down the list. And usually as we answer, some more things will pop up. So we'll start from the top. Zoom user, has anyone lost money investing with you? What happens if there's a default? Great question, of course. That's a very important question talking about risk. So thank you for asking. Marco at Norada Capital, he's done offerings since 2012. And there's never been a default, never missed payment, right? So there's a really good track record in regards to investing with us in the offerings that we do have. This offering in particular has been open since 2020. So we've been raising capital for the e-commerce space for these businesses since 2020 and doing quite well. I encourage you to read through. Well, we always send out like sample promissory notes. If not, if you don't have one of those in your inbox yet, we can certainly send you one. There's a whole section on default and risk, right? So that's all in the note for you that we can cover. It's a lot of things to go through. Ultimately, that's worst case scenario, right? That means that something in the economy has affected us and it affects the profitability of the companies. Ultimately, if there's a default, knock on wood, if we ever got there, we never have, Marco can issue equity or shares in Norada Capital, right? In the form of shares in your principal investment amount. I don't think we'll get there. It'd take a pretty, what Marco likes to call black swan event to impact everything that we're doing. But there are some things in place to support you with that. I'm not sure if you want to add anything to that, Marco, but.
No, you've gotten so good at this, Nate, that you could probably run these webinars on your own.
All right, Ken Pouladine, how do I continue my note after it reaches its term? Great question. Here's the deal, right? If we're still raising capital at the end of your note, if you do a 3-year note and we're still raising capital at the end of those 3 years, you can reinvest, right? You can roll your note over. We'll likely not be there at that point. If you do a 3-year note, maybe there's something on the table that you can roll back into, but ultimately you'd probably just get your principal returned to you and you'd find your newest investment. If you had started with us 2-3 years ago, probably much easier to roll your note back over, but we're likely not continuing to raise capital for maybe 24 months, Marco, at most, you would think. So,
Yeah, I'd say 18 to 24 months,
yeah,
and then we'll definitely scale it back.
yeah. Okay.
Are you,
If anything sticks out to you, of course.
yeah, I'm just starting to look at the list of questions here. I assume you're removing them as you address them,
I
right?
am. Yep. Yep.
Okay.
Hey, Kim, nice
Um,
to see you on here, by the way. Appreciate it.
who was that?
Kim Abney.
Oh,
Kim Abney is like one of my all-time favorite clients. He's actually bought some real estate as well. Hopefully that you get some help and support with that multi-unit deal there, Kim. We can still connect if you want on that.
well, I just want to throw a thank you out to Kim as well.
Yeah.
Um, the comment is, it has been a very positive experience lending, partnering with Norada Capital. Nate made the contract process very easy to execute. Well, thank you very much. I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
appreciate that.
Yeah. Let's grab another one here. Um, Here, let me start at the top. Norada Capital owns, I don't know who Anonymous is. Norada Capital owns 11% of the stated portfolio. I don't know where you got that number from, and issues promissory notes which are not backed by any assets. What recourse do investors have in the case of Norada defaulting?
Yeah, we just talked about default, so
Yeah, okay. So I'm not sure if there's a question here. Well, whoever anonymous attendee is, I'm not sure where you're getting the 11% of the stated portfolio. We own different percentages of the different businesses and assets.
right,
In some cases, Norada Capital is a 30 or 33% owner, along with two other business partners that I have on various ventures. So we're three partners, three owners, sharing in a third of everything.
right.
Um, it really just depends on what it is. So yeah, I'm not sure where you got that 11%. And then again, we talked about recourse there. We we've never had a delay or a default on any notes, and that, and you can go back to projects that I've been raising capital on since 2012. There, if there's a black swan event or a disruption, and major economic shift or something where there's a delay in interest payments or something like that, that interest continues to accrue. And what I'll call kind of a worst case scenario is if there's a prolonged period of time where there's a liquidity issue or a illiquidity event. This is in your note. There's language in there to see this, but we can issue shares,
Right.
uh, ownership into Norada Capital that is equal to or greater than the principal and interest owed on that note. So it's almost like a convertible note structure where you go from just being a pure debt holder with interest payments to actually being an equity owner, a shareholder in the company that has the equivalent of or more equity than what your note is. And so longer term, that would be, we don't want to do that obviously, but longer term, that would be more beneficial for you.
Yeah.
It'll be more a higher return, like a more worthwhile, but obviously we don't want to give up equity. So we don't want to be even going down that road. So anyway, whoever anonymous attendee is, thanks for the question. Let's see here. Do you want to go back and forth, or do you want me to just keep picking them?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay.
Keep going.
I don't know if how to pronounce your name. Is it Lowen Dow? Oops, I guess I shouldn't say last names, but Lowen.
Yeah.
I have a 3-year note. Can I extend it to 5? Yeah. Yeah, we could do an extension, or we could just simply reissue a new note that just starts now, and it's just it's almost like an extension of a term.
Yeah.
It's whatever you want to do.
Yeah,
Just
Lone, reach out to me. He works with
yeah,
me, so that's fine. Lone, we
yeah,
can
okay,
we can figure that
perfect.
out. Yeah.
So yeah, you can just extend that. He's also asking, if I have 100,000, want to add another 100K, can those combined to get the 15%? Well, you're already at 15% if you have $100,000 investment. So your note is $100,000. If you're adding 100,000 for a new $200,000 note, yes, you can do that. You would qualify for a 5% bonus at that point because you now have a $200,000 investment. That's kind of our third tier. And Nate, maybe we should put the slide up just to show, the investment itself. But yeah, if you are at 100,000, you're adding 100,000, now you're at 200,000, we can issue a new note for you that continues that 15% interest per year.
Mm-hmm.
Again, it's still paid monthly. but now you qualify for a bonus 5% interest payment on the maturity date of that note. So you would actually end up getting a 5% bonus or kicker at the end of it.
Yeah, if you want to share, the screen share is disabled on my end, so I can certainly show that
Oh,
page.
really? Okay, sure.
Yeah.
Let me do that. Make co-host. Okay, you should be able to do it now.
All right.
All right, cool.
Yep. So here's what Marco was talking about right here. Right. This is again, if you're an accredited investor, we have your letter of accreditation. You choose your term between 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, 12 to 15% annual interest, with 5% paid at maturity, monthly interest payments, principal repaid at maturity. So this is all in the investor slide deck, the link that Marco sent you guys. So you should be able to see that there in your profile, your investor slide deck. So, all right. All right, Marco. So moving on here to other questions.
Yep. I'm just looking at them right now. Alex, way to go, Marco, to weather through the COVID pandemic and keeping investors in the positive. Were there any late or missed monthly payments during that time? Good question, Alex. No, there weren't any late payments or missed payments. And by the way, thank you for the comment. COVID was interesting because it not only was hurtful and damaging for a lot of people and a lot of businesses, especially service-based businesses and restaurants, it actually was also helpful to other industries and other businesses. Because if you stop and think about it, with COVID, with a lot of people being forced to stay home and not be able to go out and shop, go or want to go to malls and stores to shop, it really forced or pushed a lot of people to shop online, whether it would be Amazon.com, Walmart.com, HomeDepot.com, Wayfair.com, you name it. So more and more people were being forced to shop online and getting used to the fact that they have to shop online if they want to order goods and services. So it actually boosted retail sales in the e-commerce space. So it was great for anybody who was online already or shifting to online sales. So for us, it was actually very helpful. Well, at the same time, it also accelerated the failure rate of many retailers and including large retailers. This to some degree helped us with the acquisition of Pier 1 and others. They were already in trouble. They were already saddled with debt and on the road to ruin. But pandemics and black swan events like COVID, it's kind of a double-edged sword. It's a problem and a disaster for many, and an opportunity on the flip side for others. And that's what happened with us. So we just saw the opportunity and we jumped on it. We took advantage of it. We didn't sleep on it. So it's always a good way to look at things. As here's a problem, where's the opportunity? And that's what entrepreneurs do. They're problem solvers. They look for a need or a problem and solve it.
Yeah.
So Alex, thank you. Thank you and thank you. All right. Dawn, I joined late and may have missed this point, but can you invest in a self-directed account? What is the minimum investment? I'll throw this over to you, Nate, but Dawn, I just want to let you know that this is being recorded and certainly worth getting the link to watch this again from the beginning, because we covered a lot of great things in the first 30 minutes. So,
Yes.
So self-directed, Nate, you want to take that?
Yeah. Listen, absolutely. Self-directed IRAs, solo 401ks are great vehicles to invest in with a promissory note, right? The interest payments go directly back into that vehicle, whether it's tax deferred or tax free, depending on it's a Roth or traditional. So short answer to your question, yes, absolutely, you can use an IRA as long as the money's be able to is able to be rolled over, right? Yes, you can use that.
And then the minimum.
The minimum investment to reiterate is $50,000. And you'll see in the chat box to everyone, Marco has put in there a link to the investor profile, which talks about the investor slide deck, which talks about minimums and terms and things like that. So
yeah, 50,000. We talked about that before too. 50,000 is our advertised and stated minimum for this particular investment, this offering.
Yeah.
And then the interest rate goes up at 100,000 and above.
Correct.
Okay, so I'm not sure, Stuart, what you mean. Did I understand that those registered today will receive a copy of the promissory note? That could be, you could be asking one of two things. If you're just looking for a copy to read and review, we can just send that to you. That's not a problem. Just contact Nate or whoever your investment counselor is. But if you're referring to making an investment, will you receive a promissory note? Yeah, you'll actually receive the promissory note once you fill out the profile form, which is I put the link in the chat box. It's noradacapital.com/profile. So if you filled that out, it would take you like a minute or two. You would get a promissory note immediately sent to you from DocuSign, and you could read and review that. But it's not until you sign it and I sign it that you are now sitting with a fully executed, valid promissory note. At that point, the ball's in your court to essentially fund your note, your investment. Once the funds are received, you get a confirmation. You'll get a confirmation email, and your interest accrues from that day forward. So you'll get an interest payment for the balance of the current month, and then you're set up on Wells Fargo Direct Pay for an automated ACH or direct deposit every month, starting the next month during that first week. So during that first week, every month, you'll receive a direct deposit into your account, whether that's a savings account, checking account, or a self-directed retirement account like an IRA, Roth, 401k, whatever it may be. So the process is simple. Fill out the profile form, review it, sign it. I'll review it, sign it. Then you get a copy with wiring information, and then you just give that to your custodian, or if you're just sending the wire yourself, you just send the funds yourself.
Correct.
Okay, I'll clear that one. All right, you want to grab one, or should I just keep grabbing them?
Stuart, just so you know, I sent you my email address. Go ahead and email me for a copy of that note.
Brian, I'll take Brian's here. I already invested 200,000 last year. If I invest an additional 100K note now, would I qualify for the 5% bonus since I've already met the $200,000 threshold? Can I start a new $100,000 note at 15% plus 5% bonus, or would I have to combine the two notes into a new one? Nate, what was our latest policy change on that? Is it the aggregate total, or does it have to be on a note basis?
Well, it's the aggregate total. However, if you want the full 5%, the original note needs to be updated to the current dates, right? Because it's a minimum 3-year term to receive the full 5% on the total, unless you want to make some type of exception to that. But typically what happens is that 200K you already invested, we'll rewrite that note for 3 years on top of the 100K note you're reinvesting, or the new 100K you're investing. So that all 300 total would be for a further 3 years.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks.
In regards to, so Anonymous, Marco can talk to some of these in terms of, I think he's working on a cash flow pro forma at the moment that will be done probably in Q. That goes along with some of Eric's stuff. There's a cash flow pro forma that should be done Q2, mid Q2, I think, that we'll be sending out in the newsletter. We can certainly send out a balance sheet of the debts and assets in the books. As far as sending out statements for status updates for the notes, we send out direct deposit payments every month. So that the statement is on your bank, whether it's your custodial statement or your bank statement. That's basically us sending you the confirmation, because it's nothing more than a loan payment, it's an interest payment to you, right? It's a loan payment. So we're not a brokerage where we're going to, send out, some type of, update on the note. It's just a basic 12% fixed or 15% fixed. In regards to risk, do you see any issue with future risk with payments? There's always risk, right? There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. You put 100 grand in the stock market, you put 100 grand with us, there's risk, right? It's just part of investing. We're not a new lifetime annuity that's a guaranteed 3 or 4%. We're a 12, 15% promissory note fund, right? That's backed by companies. Now those companies have, years of income, and they have years of growth, right? But if something happens in the economy, like Marco talked about, if something happens and there's a major economic event that affects the profitability and the revenues of the companies, sure, it could affect you as a note holder, right? So you have to understand it. If you're going to invest in notes, there's risk involved. I'm just being very blunt and straightforward with you. Do I see anything happening, economically. I mean, we're already in recession, so we say. I mean, employment's quite high right now, but inflation's also quite high. Could something happen? Sure. Do I see something knocking out 15 plus companies and $200 million in assets under management? No, but there's no guarantee, right? Something could happen that could come along, right? And that could affect your note. That's just part of investing. So sure, there's risk.
I'll take a quick couple here. Dr. Robert, what if an investor invests $100,000 or more for where did that go?
I'm updating some questions here. That's why it's up.
Yeah, okay.
So
okay, what if an investor invests $100,000 or more for 3 to 5 years and the investor dies before the maturity? What will happen to the investor's account? It's okay, so that's a good question. I would assume that you probably should have something set up on your end where you have a will or a trust or something in place with whoever your estate attorney is, or you have some sort of estate plan. So someone would be the beneficiary of that. Someone would take over for that. Nothing would change on our end. Distributions would still end up going to the account that is set up for those direct deposits. So really, this is more of a question of what do you have in place on your end in terms of your estate plan, and who the beneficiaries are of that, because they basically would assume that note and assume those payments. So that's really,
we can also add a beneficiary line. Like we can add
yeah,
a spouse or someone as a beneficiary on your note in that case, right? It's not hard to do.
yeah,
So yeah,
exactly.
get with your attorneys, get with your estate planner. Regardless, it should kick back to you if kick back to that person if you have it, if you have like a will or you have a trust set up. So
Yeah, we're just going to continue to service that note. It's that's not going to change anything
yeah.
on our end. It's just whoever owns the account on your end. Anonymous, I'll grab a few. There's a lot of them here from Anonymous. Do you send out statements or status updates for the notes? There's no statements per se. Because your note is an interest only, the principal amount doesn't amortize, so it doesn't change. It's the same in month 1 as it is in month 36 or 48 or 60. So when the note matures, your principal is just returned with that final interest payment. And if there's a bonus that's applicable, you'll just get the bonus payment along with that. So there's really no need for a statement per se. Of course, we're going to be communicating with you along the way, but it's not like there's a monthly statement that's being emailed or mailed out. We'll be putting out a quarterly newsletter just with 3 to 5 sections or blocks, just giving updates on what's new, milestones, updates and whatnot. I have a basic structure in mind for it, and I'm going to talk to Nate and the rest of the team as far as how we want to chunk that down and what kind of content we want to put in there. But it's actually on my list of things to do here for this quarter. So we'll start putting out a regular newsletter. It could be every 2 months or maybe every 3 months. But that's really the only update you actually need, because your note doesn't really change. Your interest payments are fixed. They stay the same each and every month. I had another one marked off. This is kind of an interesting one from Anonymous. When do you expect Norada Capital will reach $1 billion value? That's a great question. It's a difficult one to answer. I will tell you that there are 5 unicorns. I'll call it 5, and without going into a lot of detail. Bodybuilding.com is a potential $1 billion business. That's a unicorn. The Money is a Mastermind is also another unicorn. It can become a $1 billion business. Level Up Real Estate as well. Aspire as well. Definitely those 3 together, which they're all joined at the hip. They're all sisters and brothers of each other. Those collectively absolutely will. We already know that. It's just a matter of time. Is it going to be 2, 3 years from now, 5 years from now? And then the last one that I'm going to call a unicorn is It's not directly related, although it might ultimately one day be rolled into Norada Capital. It's just in a sister fund, is Venue Passport. It's a fully integrated end-to-end ticketing system that can be used from anybody, from theme parks to skating rinks to major venues and concerts, you name it. It's getting some very, very deep roots with some very, very big players right now. It's even though it's in its infancy, it's a very well-developed SaaS product. And we're being told already by some very big players out there that this can be potentially a $2 to $3 billion business. So that's just something that, you know, we're pushing hard. And as a kind of an interesting side note, we're integrating that Venue Passport system, that ticketing system, into our Aspire events, which will start in about 2 or 3 months. So it'll all be run through that platform. So anyway, you know, when you look at all that and you put it all together, it's very, very possible that in a 2 to 3 year window we'll have a $1 billion valuation or more. But you know, I'm not going to get ahead of myself or get too optimistic about it. I know it'll happen in time. I just can't tell you whether it's going to be 12, 24, 36 months or 5 years from now. So,
Yep, good questions.
I'll clear that one.
Yep,
Wow, there's
answered
a
a
lot of
variety
questions
as
here.
well.
Alex, will Norada send me a 1099 INT form at the end of the year? I'll have to add the interest earned to my W-2 earnings for IRS. Yeah, if it's not in a tax deferred or a tax-free retirement account, then you process it however you need to process it. But yeah, everybody that has an applicable account will get a 1099 form at the end of, or in January, or by the end of January each and every year. So that's just something we have to send you.
Right.
Yeah, and that's typically sent via email, so I'll clear that.
Brian, preferred IRA custodian. There's a lot out there. Equity Trust is very good. I also like Horizon Trust. I like specialized IRA services. No, we do not pay the associated custodial fees. That would be for you as an investor to pay that.
I'm going to take one more from Anonymous.
Yep.
He's got a lot of good questions here. I'm going to grab one at the bottom there. He's saying, he or she, I'm still uncertain how to use non-self-directed or managed IRA funds to invest in a promissory note. In that scenario, where does the interest payment go? It's very simple. It doesn't matter what the account is. Ultimately, if you're funding something from an account tied to whoever the lender name is on the promissory note, so it could be anonymous checking account, anonymous saving account, it could be anonymous 401k account, whatever. When you give us that account information, that routing and account number, we set you up on Wells Fargo Direct Pay. It takes 2 to 3 days for them to verify the account. Once it's verified, you're set up. We just can automate the payment, and it's just a monthly direct deposit right into that bank account. So there's really nothing you need to think about or worry about as long as it's a US-based account. And once we set it up on Wells Fargo's Direct Pay, you just get that ACH payment each and every month. So it's not so much whether it's a managed IRA account or not. As long as it's an account that can receive funds and be processed, you're going to get that monthly interest payment.
Correct.
Did I miss anything on that, Nate?
Nope. We have people that use EINs, they use businesses, they use personal accounts. You know, it's all over the map. We can title a note to whatever account, whatever you want us to title it to, as long as it's if it's like a self-directed IRA, it has to be a custodian that allows notes. But Don, good question. Is there an option to reinvest interest payments? There is, as long as we're still, there's two answers to this question. One is, as long as we're still raising capital, yes, we can take on, more investment capital from you. If you have a current note, the minimum reinvestment is $25,000, right? We're not going to take on an extra $2,000 or $3,000 or $5,000. The minimum reinvestment is 25. So if you have a 100K note and that's 15K a year, and by a year and 3 quarters later, you have 30 grand or 25 grand saved up, you can take that interest and reinvest it. Yes. But the minimum is 25.
Did you just answer Don's question?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Let me clear that. Anonymous, what time is it? Okay, I'll grab another one or two here. It's 11:58. I received a note opportunity from you about a month ago for a short-term note. Is that something that comes up frequently? No, it's not. That was a very unique one-off opportunity, and that was actually a real estate-based investment. That was really more on the Norada real estate investment side than it was on the
Yeah.
Norada Capital side. And I'm guessing one of our investment counselors just reached out to you directly on that. That is already done. It's taken care of. It closed. It's,
Perfect.
we've gotten our money back from that, and it's a done deal. So but no, those don't come up very often. So I wouldn't like sit around waiting for these, unique one-off type of offerings. They come up from time to time, but not very frequently. So so I wouldn't think about that too much. And let me see what else we have here. Um, I'm not sure what you mean by this, anonymous. Do you see any issue with future payments or risk of payments to investors given the high interest lending environment we're currently in? Trying to understand the context of a high interest lending
We're
environment.
not tied to like the Fed rate or anything like that, like the banks borrowing money, but
Right.
I mean, I'm not sure that's what you mean, but we hit on risk earlier in regards to risk, non-risk, like investing in the fund. But I'm not sure what you mean by high interest lending environment. So
Yeah. And then we'll just close it up here with this last one. Again, I just need some clarity. Maybe you need to get in touch with whoever your investment counselor is. But in the cash flow projections, where are the interest payments to investors? Is that in the note surplus payoff? No, that's not in the note surplus line. There's a debt service line. I believe it's labeled debt service on there. I have to
it's
go
no
back.
surplus payoffs in that he's talking about the chart, the cash flow projections chart in the investor slide deck,
Yeah.
where there's gross revenues, interest revenues. Yeah, it's the last line on there is note surplus payoffs.
Okay. Okay.
But
So
yeah, what you're seeing there in 2024, 2025 through 2027 is you'll see it go to red in that line that we're talking about. And you'll see that that red number is us paying off the projected debt service. So
yeah. Stephen, we'll wrap it up with this one. Are you personally invested in Norada? Is your money tied up in Norada? Yeah, exactly. That's how it actually started.
yeah,
I was making these investments myself personally when we started going down the e-commerce road and making these acquisitions. And then, that requires multiple millions of dollars. So I put in, whatever I could as my own personal investment, and then realized, okay, there's a lot more opportunity on the table. And it's just like a real estate syndicator where, they invest in real estate, but then they, want to do bigger deals, apartment buildings, whatever it is, and they just don't have the capital. So they just put a deal together as a syndicator and create a group investment, go out and raise the capital, and essentially be the fund manager or the syndicator on that deal, and they get a piece of it, and then they just build the business from there. So yes, I'm definitely personally invested and tied into these. So, all right, it's 12:01.
yeah,
Again, this
perfect
is
timing.
being
Yeah.
recorded. We'll have a replay link going out at some point soon.
Yeah, the last thing I want to do, Marco, before we jump off here is I want to pull up the profile form and just kind of walk people through that real quick
Sure.
before we end. So guys, I know we're gonna wrap up here in just a second. I'm gonna share my screen one more time and just want to walk you through what it looks like to get started. There's a link to this that Marco can put in the chat. This is our investor profile form. So everything we do is automated, right? Everything. So when you want to get started, whether it's through an LLC, an IRA, you would fill out this investor profile form. One thing that really is important for us at Norada is sometimes there's a difference between your personal name and your note holder name, right? So let's say, for example, you're using a self-directed IRA to invest. You might put your full name here, but you want to put the name of your custodian here. And if there's an LLC attached with the EIN, the reason this is important, I walk people through it, is because at the end of the year, we're going to provide tax information. So if you don't give us the right information, we can't provide the right tax forms to you. but this is how you get started. This takes you like 5, maybe 10 minutes max to fill this out. You hit complete your investor profile. That kicks you a contract within 10 minutes. Don't ever sign anything right away. We'll double check everything for you. We'll confirm dates, we'll confirm terms, we'll confirm amounts, the titling's correct for you. And from there, you sign, Marco signs, it's a wire transfer to Norada Capital, and we're off to the races. We do what's called an accrual payment. So let's say, for example, you get started and let's say you filled a note today and you decide to wire your funds, I don't know, May 5th or something like that. Once your funds hit our account, we will prorate you the remainder of May, and your contract date would start June 1. We're still going to compensate you for having your capital in use in May. That first week in June would be your first payment of your term. So let's say you do a 3-year note, payment 1 of 36 would be June, the first week in June 1st, whatever it might look like. So we do prorate. So that's the process, right? So if you want to get started, you can fill it out now. If not, contact us at noradacapital.com. There's a chat widget. There's a profile form you can fill out to reach out to one of our assistants there, and we'll get on the horn with you. So anything else to add, Marco?
No, I appreciate everybody taking the time here this 1 hour. So thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Well, we'll say goodbye here, guys. Every Wednesday we're typically on these. So if you have questions, reach out. We'll chat with you soon. And I appreciate your time. Be well. Take care.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks.
Bye-bye.
See ya.